Hello everybody, welcome back to Hunting Mark. I am Cameron. Today we are reviewing for you the Bushnell TRS-25. And yes, for those of you eagle-eyed viewers out there, it is absurd to have this red dot mounted to this rifle in this manner. But I will explain exactly why that happened. But first, we're going to go over the basic specifications of this red dot here. Okay, so the Bushnell TRS-25, it's a budget red dot. Now there are red dots that are far cheaper, but you start to get a little bit into dangerous waters when you start to go that low on a red dot. So I would consider the Bushnell to be positioned as kind of like a premium, like it's a budget premium, a bajemium, something like that. Like it's a nice red dot. It is a nice red dot that is priced maybe a little bit lower than it should be, but we're gonna find out. So here are the basic specs. All right. The TRS-25 has 11 different brightness settings, none of which are compatible with night vision. So if night vision is something that's important to you, move right along. This is not the red dot that's going to work for you. So it goes from 1 to 11, and it's all for regular viewing. It uses a CR2032 battery, and the battery life is rated to be about 3,000 hours at the lowest brightness setting. We'll talk more about that. It comes with a Weaver mount, which is interesting. Most red dots will come with a Picatinny mount. Weaver is not a problem. A Weaver mount will go on a pick rail just fine. Inverse is not always true, but as far as mounting your your TRS-25 to a rifle, it will mount. This is actually a pick rail that it's mounted on right now. So also your adjustments on your windage and elevation, they are 1 MOA. Another common thing you'll see on most red dots is a half MOA, but they've opted to go for just a single MOA, which we'll talk again more later. Bushnell did nitrogen purge this red dot, so it is fog proof. It is also IPX7 waterproof, and it has a 3 MOA dot on it, which I like. One thing that is important to note is that it does not ship with a riser mount. So if you are like me and aren't paying super close attention when you order it, and assuming it does come with a riser mount, you would be incorrect. You would need to also order a riser mount separately. So, and a tricky thing with that, let's go ahead and dive right into this part. A tricky thing with the fact that it doesn't come with a riser mount is that the mount that it does come with is not detachable. It is part of this, it's a single piece unit. So you actually need a riser mount that has a male pick or Weaver rail on top to go onto the bottom of this, with the female side to go onto the rail of your gun. So keep that in mind. You can find those. They're not hard to find, but as long as you know you need to find them, it won't be an issue. So now you know. Be aware of that. So as you can see here, sans riser mount. This is a pretty absurd way to configure one's red dot. We toyed with the idea. We thought it might be fun if we put it on the very end like a front sight, but then opted to we just got to slap it on there to show this is why you need a riser mount. If you were to try to, like, we tried sighting with this, and like the barrel, the handguard and the barrel are more than half of your sight picture when it's configured like this. You need to be able to go up so that you can get that height over bore that is necessary in order to, you know, actually use the sight. So we wanted to get it mounted on a rifle, make sure it mounted nice and tight. It is snug. It's not going to have any issues with recoil or anything like that. It's going to be nice and snug, but you do want to purchase that riser mount separately so you don't look like a clown. Okay, so once you've got it mounted on the rifle that you're using or wherever you're mounting it, the 11 brightness settings. Testing those out, we found, at least I found, that the dimmest setting, the level 1 setting, was a little brighter than I would prefer for a like in your house at night kind of home defense scenario. It's just a little brighter than I would want. It wasn't problematic. Like it wasn't glaring out at me. It wasn't occluding my sight picture or anything like that, but it was just a little bit brighter than I would prefer it. Conversely, the brightest setting was also a little bit dimmer than I would like in daylight. So in the brightest conditions like this, the highest brightness setting wasn't quite as bright as I wished it would be. And so it's not ideal for me, but that's a preference thing. It is absolutely usable in daylight. You can see the red dot in daylight at the brightest setting, and it doesn't cause any issues with shooting in a dark situation as well. So that's a preference thing, but be aware of that. Also, the battery life, there's a fantastic answer to a question on the Amazon product page of all places, where a user took the the power draw from the red dot at different brightness levels and just mathed it out with the capacity of the battery, and found that despite Bushnell's claim of 3,000 hours of battery life at the lowest battery setting, mathematically you should only expect about 950, which is still a lot of hours, and every red dot manufacturer lies about their battery capacity, about the hours of usage. Every single one. None of them have any scruples when it comes to just throwing out crazy numbers about the expected battery life of their red dots. So don't hold that against Bushnell too much, but just be aware of it. You'll be getting between 950 hours at the lowest brightness setting to about 250 hours at the highest brightness setting, if I'm remembering correctly. So battery life isn't really much of an issue. CR2032 batteries are cheap anyway, so just carry an extra one, have it handy. One thing that I think is missing from the Bushnell TRS-25 that really probably should be there is some form of shake awake or motion activation. It would be really nice if that was a part of it. A lot of red dots at this price point do not have it, but some do. And where Bushnell has that unique positioning, I feel like they could actually really own this price point. They probably should consider adding that in a future model, in my opinion, but it does not have any kind of shake awake. That said, I actually really like the way the dial works. So to turn it on, there's not an on button or anything like that. You just turn this dial here from 0 to 1 or 11, and then you start it off. I like this because in my experience with red dots, I usually want to start out at either the lowest brightness or the highest brightness anyway. And I may want to go, and often I do want to go somewhere in the middle, but it's not a problem to start high or start low and then get there. Yes, if you're in a life-threatening situation and your heart's pumping and it's the scariest situation in your life, is it a little bit cumbersome to try to scroll, twist to this exact brightness that you want? Yes, but also in that sort of situation, you're not really worried about having that absolute perfect brightness of a dot to acquire your target. You just need to acquire your target. So you just slap it onto a brightness. If it's a little bit brighter than you normally have, it doesn't matter because it's still fine. If it's a little bit dimmer than you normally want it to have, it doesn't matter because it's still fine, as long as you can acquire your target. So there are different opinions on that, but that is mine. Another thing to consider is that where the highest brightness setting is a little bit dimmer than I would want in daylight, we actually tested it in darkness as well, and it doesn't bloom. It doesn't glow up your image too much, or really even at all. So even if you accidentally get it at the brightest brightness setting in the dark, you can still use it just fine. It won't be the most comfortable thing you've ever done in your life, but it'll be okay. It'll be usable. One thing I want to talk about, this is not designed to really do anything other than a red dot is intended for. This is intended for CQB, very close range stuff. It's designed for fast target acquisition and not a whole lot of precision. Now you've got a 3 MOA dot, so that's a good start if you wanted to take it out to as far as 100 yards or so. But the big issue with it is your 1 MOA adjustments on your windage and your elevation. An MOA is a whole inch at 100 yards. And that doesn't sound like very much when you're aiming at a man-sized target, and it's not when you're aiming at a man-sized target. So it's fully in line with what a red dot is supposed to do. But if you're the kind of person who tries to get as much versatility out of your equipment as possible, where yes, you want a red dot, you want that 1X optic on your rifle, but you also want to be able to take it out to 100 or 200 yards and still have a certain amount of precision, then this is not the red dot to buy while doing it. The dot itself seemed relatively sharp. It was a little bit fuzzy, but I'm starting to wonder if that's just my eyes, like I have a low level astigmatism or something, because every red dot I've ever seen looks like that. But that is true for my experience with the Bushnell as well. So that is our review of the Bushnell TRS-25. Any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. We will do our best to answer them. Thanks so much.